Welcome to Cookies and Careers Coffee Talk. In this podcast, we talk to regular people about career and life advice. These aren't CEOs, these aren't famous people, these are just regular people who've had careers giving advice to all of you. We're not famous yet, but hopefully you're gonna make us famous. In our episode or our podcast today, we're gonna talk about the market, we're gonna talk about different career advice, we're gonna talk about millennial versus more experienced people, how we wanna work, how we like to work, and then we're gonna see where the conversation goes. Our snack today are mint brownies and chocolate chip cookies, and we will definitely be posting the recipe for those. I want to introduce you to the people who are kind enough to join me today and offer their advice. People come from different backgrounds, different careers, and that's what makes this really exciting. So on my right, we've got Tommy. He is in sales for medical devices. Amy in marketing. George in finance executive, and Bhupender an IT executive. So welcome everybody to Coffee Talk. This is so exciting, isn't it?
Yes, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sherry.
So I wanted to start with where the market is today. So everybody's been reading about the layoffs. All we've heard about for the past year and a half is layoffs. And I saw a recent stat where 300,000 jobs were lost last year due to layoffs. So now we've got a lot of young people who are graduating, young people in the market who are even experiencing layoffs, and it's their first job. So it's quite overwhelming, I think, for a young person to feel secure. So that's going to be my first question of the day. Anybody just answer, is what advice would you give people, young people today in this type of market?
Is that somebody that's been laid off or just in general?
Let's say somebody who has a job. Let's say 24 years old, I have a job, but I'm in this market, right, where layoffs seem to happen sort of at random. How do you, I guess one thing is, how do you protect yourself? Is there a way you become aware that there might be a layoff?
Well, what I would say, a lot of people just say, Sherry, that, love what you do and you'll find a way to make it. But you should also, I think in my opinion, especially young people, should go into an industry that where they're in, what they're interested in, that's what the company does to make money. So if you're a scientist, go into a pharmaceutical company. If you're an IT professional, go into an IT company, because that's where you're going to get the most money, and that's the place that they're going to apply the resources. If you're working in a bank, you don't want to necessarily be in IT, necessarily. Now, to get your start, maybe, but for a long-term career, that's where I would say you should start looking.
So start looking where your passion is.
Where your passion is, but also where the company makes money.
So wherever their revenue is,
exactly.
That's the department you should be in.
Correct.
Gotcha, I understand. Are there other ways to maybe look out for, or you can't necessarily protect yourself from layoff, but be aware?
I think it's very difficult, right? You can't really foresee that layoffs are coming in all the situations, right? So you have to make sure that you're relevant wherever you are, to make sure that you're bringing value to the company and organization, that you're not laid off in the first place. But it can happen to anybody, whether you are a newcomer or you've been experienced, right? I'm in the industry for 3 decades now. It can happen to me, and it's traumatizing, right, for anybody. So just to make sure that you are ready for it, if and when it happens, is just to make sure you're upskilling, you're reskilling, and you're having your network connections open all the time. Don't take it too seriously. It's corporate world. It can happen to anybody.
Right.
I would build off what you said, because I think controlling the controllables is such a huge factor. You won't always be able to control, obviously, if you are laid off and when you have to deal with that, but you can control things that would help insulate yourself. Having that strong, authentic network, having a savings account, having a strong support system, always enhancing your skills outside of work, and just keeping that very fluid and always ongoing. So that way, if you do get laid off, you feel like you have some sense of security in your life because you've built up the confidence in your network, in your savings account, and things like that to prepare for if emergencies like that do happen.
Right.
Yeah, there's been a lot of layoffs in sales recently, and I think the best way to kind of leverage against finding an opportunity quickly is really just get really good at your job. I think, I can think of other companies that have laid off, and we know who the talented people are, and our company is very fast to hire them.
Interesting.
Just because they're talented and they were unfortunately, to make room on the bottom line, they were cut. And so I think just getting really good at your job, and what that means is doing extra, talking to your boss, seeing what you can do to get better. And I think that's how you kind of can insulate yourself a little bit. Yeah,
I think the key one point that I want to mention here is that layoff has nothing to do with your performance all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially now.
And especially now. And
right.
for younger folks, I mean, if they are in their first job and they are hit with layoff, it hits their confidence, right? Mm-hmm. I think we have to be mindful of the fact that it's not about your performance, it's not about your skill, it's the environment, right? And you can't control the environment all the time. So you got to have that confidence and go back and make sure that you're applying in the right areas and talking to the right people, and you'll get back in the industry, right? That's the key here, from my perspective. I think.
Right. Yeah. In this article I read, it said because layoffs are so commonplace now, that there's not so much of a stigma associated with them anymore. So even though your confidence might be hit, you have to realize that it's not like abnormal anymore. So there's less stigma around it. So you shouldn't feel stigmatized yourself. But it said one of the first things you should do or not do is panic. You shouldn't within 24 hours of being, reduced, you shouldn't post your new updated resume on LinkedIn. What you should do is have a cup of tea or have a cup of coffee and just relax for a few days and just figure it out.
Don't jump to the next opportunity.
Don't jump to the next opportunity.
But so easy to say, but so difficult to do.
It is so hard to do.
One of my mentors back in the day, he said, never run from something, run towards something. And I think that's kind of relevant what you're speaking to. It's don't panic, and don't just kind of fall into the next job that offers you money. You want to go towards something that you actually feel passionate about, and kind of to your point, right? Something that you want.
And to Amy's point, when you talked about having a savings account, it's really important for young people to have a backstop, whether it's a good support system from your family or money in the bank where you could afford to wait 3-6 months to get something.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what you want to do next, but like Tommy was saying, like your mentor gave you, don't jump to the next thing that pays. Try to figure out what that thing is that is going to, give you the income that you want, but also some sort of joy. Now, I've been trying to figure that out for 2 years now. So folks out there, it doesn't change with age. We all at different ages, different people, we find ourselves in the market, and especially when you've had a long career, it really does take a while to kind of figure out what do I want to do, what did give me, excitement and passion every day.
Right, and to Benda's point about being, don't be embarrassed or. The people, and don't be embarrassed to tell people you feel that might be able to help you. That's the best way to find your next position is through networking, through people that you didn't even think would know somebody, but people know other people and other people. So that's the avenue that's, in my opinion, the best way to find your next opportunity.
And personally, I believe that the younger folks have advantage, to be honest, right? If you are in the industry
Not geezers like us?
No, especially because what I think is that, when you're young, you're going out and you're meeting people versus somebody who's been in the industry for 3 decades or 4 decades. Going and finding a job can be difficult, right? But for younger people, they are more adapt to the changing environment. They have more skills as far as the technology and other things are concerned. So I think they fit into many different places compared to more experienced people. So it's both ways, right?
Right.
Shadi, you...
It's interesting, though. One little advice on that, to build on that is, and you guys, since you are in the millennial area, just making sure that your network doesn't include just people who you might have reported to, but your peers, right? Because your peers will get jobs other places. Mm-hmm. And it's your peers who actually, and it may be classmates, because you're closer to that than we are, right? But your classmates, other peers, they may be the ones that open up the doors. So you want to build those relationships in your workplaces, even your first or second job, because you don't know where your peers are going to end up.
I think there was a shift somewhere, and I don't know where this shift came, but I think our generation has the benefit of not having the pressure of your first job being your forever job. And I think, we both saw with our parents that they stayed in the same company or same jobs because it was just what you did for security. And I think along the lines of the younger generations being able to have the flexibility to decide to change and it not being as big of a risk factor, And so something I learned when I left my first job after 5 years was your network grows because of that. So yes, I had a network of just people in my company and some classmates that I had. And when I switched jobs, it grew. And so if you are laid off and you're concerned about it, think about the opportunity you have to not only network in the job hunt process, but the network you'll build once you land that new role as well.
Agree.
Yeah, it's a really good point. How did you get into sales, Tommy? Were you in sales like right when you graduated?
Yeah, so I've been in sales my entire career, but as far as networking goes, I think there's a right way to do networking and a wrong way, a waste of time, really. I get medical device is kind of a hard industry to break into, and I probably get somebody to reach out to me, I'd say once a week, about trying to get them in a med device. And I'm like, I'm not the guy that's going to help you do that. I mean, I can't, I'm not the hiring manager. I don't have a charge of resumes. I would love to help you, but I think the right way to go about it is figuring out who's the decision maker, because all these big companies, they all have this AI generated machine where you submit your resume and you get filtered out depending on, your experience, all these types of things. The right way to do it is to reach out to someone who's the decision maker of who's actually going to be hiring you. And I think that's what ironically, I fell into a situation where I played softball with a girl who worked for the company that I work for now. And I was like, hey, can you submit my resume? And she was like, yeah. She got my foot in the door, and thankfully I was able to kind of close the deal.
Right.
But it's so challenging, right, to really find those people who can take your resume and forward it or push it up the ladder, right, to get the right attention it requires, right? I wish there was a platform to do that. I mean, for younger generations, that hey, here is my resume, take a look at it. It's not like a chatbot or something else is reading it and just filtering it out because it's just automated, right? That's I feel like is kind of a blocking factor out there where a lot of people get frustrated that their resume is not in the right hands.
Right. Well, that's, I think, Tommy's point, though, too. Just taking that a little further, like he was playing softball with a young woman who worked where he wanted to, and he said, here you go. So I think that's part of networking. It's not just on LinkedIn, right? A lot of everybody across generations is using LinkedIn, but really it's like you need to go to events, you need to talk to people. Sometimes it's really hard to do that. It's hard to put yourself in a room of strangers and have a conversation, but that's like, that is that's one advice I would definitely give to someone. For the younger folks who are just graduating, I'm telling them, find a company you want to work for, find somebody 6 degrees of separation who could make an introduction, ask for an informational interview so you could speak with them, right? Have a conversation with somebody, because they may not have a job opening for you, but if you have a good conversation, maybe they'll remember you when they do have a job offering, or maybe they know somebody who has a job. So, I mean, networking comes in many ways, but definitely doing things and talking to people, whether it's on a sports team or whatever you like to do for fun, that's a good way because you're relaxed, right? You're in a relaxed situation, and that may be a way for you to meet people, because if they're in your age group or older, they probably are working somewhere.
Right.
We were talking about this on the way up here, about the importance of networking and coming out of college and trying to land your first role or land your second role. You underestimate the importance of who you know. And there's, I think, a little bit of a shame factor in using who you know to land a job because you feel like you didn't do it on your own or you needed the help. And you have to release that, because you can have the best resume, but it will get lost in that filtered version unless you know a human. And so I think having someone to help you get your foot in the door is necessary, but you have to understand you're going to be the person who keeps you in the door.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
The old
I think
adage,
everybody
what you
That's
know,
right.
what you know and who you know is
Right.
two different things.
yes,
But that
'Cause
second
the resume
part,
could be the best resume,
right.
but it won't get you into the door
Right.
unless you really.
But the second part of that is important. You're the one who keeps you in the door. Like
Right.
once you're there, you're still networking,
yeah,
right? You're networking in the company. Let's say you don't like, who you work for. Then maybe you find other people, especially if it's your first or second job, right? You're trying to get used to how people operate. Everybody operates differently. If you find somebody else in the company that you respect, you see them talk and you like what they do, then maybe you ask them to be a mentor, right? Like it's okay to do that. Another bit of advice I think I gave in a Cookies and Careers episode in December or so was, at the holiday party, go to the executive and introduce yourself. Don't be afraid. And I think for a person, it's their first or second job, it's scary. It's like, it's hard to go up to the CEO and say like, hi, I'm Sherry. Nice to meet you. Like, it is really, it's scary, but like maybe it's not the CEO. Maybe you don't have to go to the CEO, but maybe introduce yourself to an executive.
It can be scary at any age, right? Not
Right.
just for the younger generation,
true.
right? But the one
Right.
thing that I want to emphasize is that, first job is usually everybody wants it because they want to get in the job market, right?
Right.
It may not be a perfect fit, but first jobs gives you an idea as to what you like, what you don't like, right? Finding the right fit is one, but also finding the right environment you want to be in is also critical, right? So, having layoffs and that's getting you an opportunity to go try somewhere else may not be a bad thing. It might
great
put
way
you
of
in
looking at
a
it.
completely different environment that might be much more, conducive for your career.
And don't be, if you are laid off, don't be afraid to say maybe you'll take a consulting gig for a little while. That gives you an opportunity to meet different people. It gives you a chance to test them. They get a chance to test you. And if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't work out, you've at least tried it. And in the meantime, you're still looking for that career as opposed to a job.
Right.
I would even argue consulting is one of those things you could do to insulate yourself if you are worried about a pending layoff or looking to switch your next job. It's where you can try out additional interests that maybe are not available at your current company, in your current role, your current scope. And so building a network outside of that, even if it's starting with your friends and family or someone owns a small business, helping them in your free time, I think is a great way to insulate yourself if you are worried about layoffs. I mean, in this market, you don't really know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, like you'll never be able to read it, but.
Yeah, one more question on this topic, and then we're going to move into our next topic. A lot of seniors, and at least a few seniors in college that I've talked to, not a lot, I wouldn't say across the board, but they're looking at grad school because the job market is tight. And I find that might benefit the grad schools a lot. But I'm just interested on everybody's thought on that. Like, I guess it's a way to protect yourself, right? Like throw the net wide, apply to grad school just in case you don't get a job. But you have to know what you want to do. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting time and money in grad school, right?
Yeah, I would say, and the one piece of advice to people who are networking, and again, this advice came from a mentor, so I can't take ownership of it.
I want to meet this mentor.
Yeah, really good. Really good.
I could use this mentor.
Like, as far as I feel like people are so afraid of rejection, and the fear, like if you're asking for somebody for something, most of the time that I've ever asked somebody who is in a position that I want to be in, they're the first person to help. Right? People who are successful usually want to help those who are trying to get into a position. So if you can tell yourself that a 30-second conversation might be challenging for 30 seconds, but after that it's over. Like, it's not, like, if you're asking for something, it might be difficult for 30 seconds, but then it's done.
Right.
And so just get past the fear of rejection and be able to network that way in person. It's just so much more powerful. But as far as going to grad school, I would just be fearful of, taking on so much debt with grad school, and you don't know what your trajectory is going to be.
I agree with you.
If you have a
I
plan
think
in
it's a
place,
mistake just to go into grad school because you can't find a job.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been told that I landed a job or a role because I went to grad school, and I was in that boat. I didn't have a job lined up after college, and so I applied to grad schools, and I really enjoyed my studies, and I feel like I learned more in grad school than I did in my four years of undergrad, which is ironic. But it's not as big of a differentiator as most people think, because there are a lot of people going to grad school too.
Right.
So I think a lot of it has to do with your
I never went to grad school.
Yeah.
Neither have I.
Right,
Neither
exactly.
have
I think as you go into your career and job, the experience matters more than the qualification, right? The education is definitely something that gets you in the job, but after that, it's all about your experience and
Well,
networking.
it depends on the career you're going into.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you really want to move into AI, then maybe getting that grad, because people don't have the skills yet. If that's a way to get the skills, it
Some
might make
careers
sense.
requires you have to have a
Right.
grad degree,
That's true.
right? I mean, if you're going to be a doctor, you're going to go to a grad school for sure,
Let's
right?
hope so. Right, let's hope so. You see all that. All right, so our next part of our rounds here is going to be more like millennial versus more experienced people, and the question is just like, how we like to work, how are the differences between us. Maybe they're not differences, maybe there's similarities in how we like to work. So our first question is, how do you prefer to communicate with colleagues? In other words, do you prefer to do instant messaging, Teams and Slack, email, or phone, or in person in some cases? So what's your preferred way of communication? So
I'm 100% in person, but that's me. But, given the situation around the world, sometimes you have no choice.
So if you're home, if you're remote, would you Slack somebody? Would you email them? Or would you just pick up the phone and call them?
I would pick up the phone.
Right.
Well, no wonder George calls me so many times.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But I think for me, it's all about messaging, right? Whether it's Teams or Slack or any other collaboration tool, because I think the younger generation is more comfortable and easily accessible from those methods. But at the same time, it's all about adaptability and flexibility. It's the new technology. It's the way the world operates now. So you have to adapt to the same thing. My question, going back to the younger generation versus the more experienced, is, do millennials really like the tag of being millennials? Or is it just like, hey, we came up with this term, and does it really matter? I mean, I think it's the changing world, right?
You're so deep.
And I think we have to bridge this gap between the younger and the older generation to work together, right? I think that's what matters, right?
That's a great point. I think everything is in the name of efficiency nowadays. So like emailing, I can't stand, because it will take from the start of the day to the end of the day to have that full conversation to get where you need to be. Whereas if you picked up the phone or Teams or Slack somebody, it's much quicker. So I prefer that from an efficiency perspective. I don't know if that makes it a millennial.
The voice also.
Well, you're both the same.
The voice is.
So your similarity. Oops, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
don't hit me. A text or an email could be misconstrued because you don't understand really how they're, depending on how you say it.
Right.
You know, the old adage is, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
That's true.
That could change the whole idea.
Right.
For me, I am all in person, and I'll tell you why.
Well, you're sales, that's why.
You're in
right.
sales.
And it's kind of touches on, I need to be able to see in people's eyes and read their body language. Because you can say one thing and mean a whole another thing.
Exactly.
And I think it gets misconstrued in the way that you talk to somebody via text or email. Is if you put an exclamation point, are they talking loud at me, or are they excited? Like, what is their body language telling you? So that's why it's so important for me.
Interesting.
So what do you do with in the current environment where the younger generation wants the flexibility that, hey, we want to work remotely, we want to travel, we want to see the world. How do you do that in person when they're not even available for in-person meetings?
Well, for me, I don't work with the younger
Right.
generation.
He's working with doctors.
I think I identify with you guys for sure on the in-person, the older generation in person, just
like
because,
Right.
I feel as though it's very important, and I guess I grew up with a very old school father too, who was kind of talking about, to kind of speak to your point about the millennials, like, I think anytime somebody brings up the word millennial, it has like a negative connotation to it, because like, oh, those millennials are doing this or those, and so I think we're trying to prove, like, there are some good millennials out there who are really trying to
That's
help
great,
out.
millennials.
I don't think there is any negative connotation
me
with
neither.
this, right? I think it's all about, it's a different environment, right?
Yeah, I think so. I was like, I never thought it was negative. But
Your dad doesn't listen to this.
But I mean, I think in Gen Z, you hear a lot about Gen Z, like, and how they want to work, and so I think that's kind of where you're going.
Who's Gen Z?
The next level down,
the
right?
level.
So anybody the way to say where Gen Z is like anybody who was remote in school during COVID was
like
Gen
17,
Z,
18 years old.
right? So either they're Gen Z in college if they were remote, that's like a good cutoff.
Yeah, I think it's going to be challenging in the next few years, because we, as more experienced dealing with both the sides of the equation here, we got to have that sort of understanding how to deal with the younger generation. What are they looking for? How to keep them engaged at the workplace, right?
Right.
I think younger people wants more frequent feedback. They want to know that are they making a difference at workplace, right? Older generation is probably a little bit more laid back and doing their work because they know what they're doing and they have the experience, whereas the younger generation is trying to learn more and trying to get into the minds of us, like, hey, what are you thinking versus how we are thinking? Does that match? Is there a synergy between the two mindsets here? And I think that's the key for any managers who is having seniors as well as the younger generation, it's a challenge for them to manage those sort of resources.
I think work-life balance, though, is really more important. Not more important. I think Gen Z maybe learned from us, right? So I do, right? So I think there is definitely more of a focus on work-life balance, and I think that we have to figure that out, how to make that work and not feel like you're stunting somebody's career because they want a balance in their lives. And so that's a part for more experienced managers to try to figure out, I think.
I think it's all part of growing up, right?
Right.
I mean, when you are young, you want to travel and you have the flexibility, but as you grow, you're like, okay, I need to be in the office, I need to talk to people in person, right? I think everybody learns as they go, right?
For entrepreneur corporate career, what would your preference or recommendation?
I don't see it any differently, Sherry. I mean, I think even if you're in a corporate job, you have to have that entrepreneurial mindset. And I think it brings creativity in the job, being innovative, trying to do things differently. That's how I look at it. And me being a corporate IT person, from an operations perspective, we look to do things differently just to make sure that we are not stuck in the same way of doing things, and it brings excitement and a new mindset of doing things. So it's not about that, hey, you being your own boss versus you're working in a corporate environment. I think you can bring a little bit of creativity and a different way of doing things by having entrepreneurial mindset in a corporate job.
An entrepreneurial mindset in a corporate job. That's
It
good
depends
advice.
on the personality. I mean, some people just are not ready to be an entrepreneur, and they feel they need the experience and education just to work with customers. So it really depends on the person.
What about this side of the couch?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would not pick one over the other. I would say it is totally individual, and you really have to evaluate why you would want to be an entrepreneur versus why you would want to stick to the corporate path. I think a lot of people have this idea that being your own boss and being an entrepreneur brings you so much more freedom and flexibility. If you are very organized and you like to take on the stress of everything falling on your shoulders and you can see way through that and you're a forward future thinker, that's great. If you have some experience to back it up and a good network, go for it. Try it out. If you're young in your career, there's always a chance to flip the table and go the other direction. Like, you're not stuck in whichever way you choose. Similarly, if you start with corporate, there's going to be the stresses of doing things you don't want to do and being told to work on projects you don't want to work on, and maybe not liking your coworker or dealing with those types of stresses.
Right.
So I think you just have to ask yourself, if you are trying to eliminate stress completely by doing your own thing, it's not going to be that.
Right.
And so you have to just...
It's just different stress.
It's just different stress. And so you need to evaluate that. And ultimately, it's whatever you can have financial stability and peace in, as well as peace of mind and the creativity and growth. You can have growth in corporate and you can have growth as an entrepreneur. And you can also have failures in corporate and failures as an entrepreneur. Right. It's up to you either way.
Right. Yeah. That's very well said. Good. All right. Ready for our next one? What are you motivated by? Right. So it's a work-life balance, company values, diversity, unique work experiences. So what motivates you?
I'm motivated by growth. I love the idea of just constantly being able to kind of refine my skills and get a little better at something that I might be weak at, or something that I'm even good at, and get better at that. That's like a big motivating factor for me. I'm not really motivated by, a little bit money, but I'm not really motivated that much by money. Definitely want to make enough,
sales
right?
guy,
But,
not motivated by money.
Yeah, but I am so on a journey to just become the best version of myself. I know it sounds so cliche, but that's like the idea. That's what excites me every day when I get up. It's just bettering myself. So.
Anybody else want to?
I'm my age. I'm just lucky to get up in the morning.
I think for me, it's about going out and working with people. I think that's what I look forward to. And, being in the corporate world, we like to go out and help people to do their job, right? So that's kind of
IT, right?
Exactly. So that motivates me, right? To be able to go out and meet people from different backgrounds and to be able to work with, not just within our team, but outside of our team, keeps us motivated.
Yeah.
I will be the person to say I'm motivated by work-life balance.
It's fine.
I think there's enough room for growing in your personal life and growing in your career without being so gung-ho on only focusing on what the growth looks like and what that trajectory is. Kind of opposite of my husband here. But like for me, my best self and my ideal corporate role is liking my life outside of work as well, and being able to fulfill my life outside of what I do while also enjoying what I do for work, but knowing that that doesn't define who I am. So a job that can offer me the flexibility to continue growing, continue doing things I like, and maintain a lifestyle that we enjoy is very important. And I've been lucky enough to find that.
That's great. How important is recognition and appreciation at work? I'm going to leave that out there, which sort of covers what you were saying a little bit about people first coming into the job market.
Yeah, I think it's very important, but we have to keep in mind that we are not overdoing it, right? I mean, there is a tendency to appreciate just for the sake of appreciation, right? I mean, it has to have a meaning, right? If people are going out of their ways and they're performing at a level where it needs to be appreciated, we have to be appreciating them, right? But don't set the bar so low that you're appreciating everybody, because then it doesn't mean anything.
Right. So you came to work today, yay! And no, not there, right?
Exactly.
I'm extremely passionate about this topic. The saying that I love to try to fill my head with is, if you live by the compliment, you die by the criticism. And I think young people need to understand that, like, not everything they do is going to be rewarded with, a pat on the back or a raise or whatever. Like, be patient, be willing to put in the work to get to where you need to get to. But at the same time, if you're in a toxic environment where you're going to sleep and you're thinking about these terrible things that are happening to you at work, and you're just not trying to go to work the next day, consider making changes. But advice. I do think it is up to leaders to, understand the environment that they're in and give people what they deserve. Because the fastest way to kill a company is to reward people who are not good.
Recognize people and criticize them at the same time. Constructive criticism. Right. Don't always do one or the other.
Yep.
Good. Well, I think this has been great advice all around. I've had so much fun talking to you guys. I love like hearing all the different perspectives, which is why I brought this team together. So thank you so much for our first podcast. I appreciate it. To everybody, we have to raise our cups. So catch you later on Cookies and Careers. Ha!